Good morning, dear students. Today I shall take up a very beautiful story of T.S. Arthur, an angel in disguise. The story begins as a melancholic one. The author has used varied vocabulary. They are emotionally positive words: love, tender, sunshine of love. Negative words: idols, vice, burial. High flown words: farewell, cord, garment made the story bright and interesting. In this story, some literary devices are also used. On entering after washing from his hands, inversions, also called anastrophe, the reversal of the normal order of words and phrases in a sentence to emphasize something. Polycentennial is a stylistic device in which several coordinating conjunctions like and or but, not are used in succession even at places where they might have been omitted. To achieve artistic effect, used to lay emphasis and to bring rhythm to the text, such kind of literary devices are used by T.S. Arthur. So let us start this story. Idleness, vice and intemperance. Idleness means a state of doing nothing. Vice, immoral or wicked behavior. And intemperance means a state of excessive indulgence in alcoholic beverage had done their miserable work. Idleness, vice and intemperance. A state of excessive indulgence in alcoholic beverage had done their miserable work. And the dead mother lay cold, and still amidst her wretched, her miserable children, she had fallen upon the threshold of her own door in a drunken fit. The mother was taking alcohol, and one day, when she entered the house, she fell near the threshold, she fell near the entrance gate in a fit of intoxication due to the excessive effect of alcohol, and died in the presence of her frightened little ones. And she died there before the frightened eyes of her children. Death touches the spring of our common humanity. Here, oxymoron figure of speech is used. Oxymoron is a figure of speech in which two opposite ideas are put together. Death here means end of life. Spring means rejuvenation of life. Oxymoron, the poet used this oxymoron here to convey the point that woman was hated and insulted by everyone in the village. But her death brought out the feelings of pity and sadness. Death touches the spring of our common humanity. This woman had been despised. Despised means hated, scoffed at, made fun of, and angrily denounced. Angrily denounced means criticized publicly by the villagers, by nearly every man, woman and child in the village. She was criticized publicly in the village by everyone, by every man, woman and children. People of the village were making fun of her. They hated her. But now, as the fact of her death was passed from lip to lip in subdued tone. But after the death of that woman, the news passed from one lip to other. But in a subdued tone, in a slow voice, people were passing this news in the village. P.T. took the place of Inger. Here metaphor is used. Metaphor is a figure of speech in which a comparison is made between two objects of different kind. But the words of comparison as so like are not used. Metaphor is an implied symbol. P.T. took the place of Inger. In the beginning, the villagers were despising her. The villagers were looking down upon her. They detested her. They criticized her publicly. She was not in the good books of the villagers due to her habit of taking alcohol. Now, after the death of that woman, P.T. took the place of Inger. The same villagers who were despising her, who were criticizing her, who were hating her, now started showing pity to her 3 children. And sorrow of denunciation. P.T. took the place of anger and sorrow of denunciation. Denunciation is criticized publicly. Sorrow took the place of denunciation. Those villagers who were criticizing her publicly, now they started showing pity, they started showing sorrow on the death of that woman who was criticized, who was despised, and who was hated by the villagers. Neighbors went hastily to the old tumbled down hut. After the death of the woman, the neighbors were rushing towards her hut, where she was living with her 3 children, in which she had secured little more than a place of shelter from summer heats and winter. There was a very little place in her hut which could save her and her children from the heat of summer and from the cold of winter. The hut was in a bad condition. The hut was in a terrible condition, and the hut was not fit to save the children from the heat of the sun and from the cold of winter. From the winter cold. Some with grave clothes for a decent interment of the body. Interment means burial. Some villagers were bringing clothes for the burial of the dead body, and some with food for the half-starving children, while the others were bringing food for the starved children. 3 in number. The children were 3 in number. Of these, John the oldest. Among the 3 children, John was the oldest one, a boy of 12-year-old. Was a stout lad. Lad means boy. He was a strong boy, able to earn his living with any farm. He was so strong that he could easily earn his livelihood by working with a farmer. Kate, between 10 and 11, Kate was the second one. She was between 10 and 11 years old. Was a bright, active girl out of whom something clever might be made if in good hands. But poor little Maggie, the youngest, was hopelessly diseased. And the last children was Maggie. She was the youngest children of the woman, and hopelessly she was diseased. She was handicapped. She was disabled. She was unable to move or walk. 2 years before, a fall from a window had injured her spine. 2 years before, she fell from the window sill and a serious injury she got in her spinal cord. From that day, she was lying on her bed and her mother was taking care of her. And she had not been able to leave her bed since. Since then, she had not been able to leave her bed. Means she was lying continuously on her bed, except when lifted in arms of her mother. When her mother was coming back, she was lifting her daughter in her hands and was taking care of the girl. What is to be done with the children? That was the chief question now. That was the chief question, what is to be done with the children? After the death of their mother, there was a burning question before the villagers, what is to be done with the children? The dead mother would go underground. The dead mother would go underground means in her grave and be forever beyond all care or concern of the villagers. But the children must not be left to starve. But the villagers were talking among themselves that the children must not be left to starve. After considering the matter and talking it over with his wife, I told you after considering, inversion is used on entering, after washing from his hands. These are the best examples of inversion. After considering the matter and talking it over with his wife, Farmer Jones said that he would take John. Farmer Jones talked with his wife and at last he decided that he would take the oldest son, John, with him, because he was a farmer and he thought that the oldest son, who was very strong and stout, would help him in farming. That's why he opted John. Do well by him now that his mother was out of the way. And Mrs. Ellis, who had been looking out for a bound girl, concluded that it would be charitable in her to make choice of Katie. Mrs. Ellis opted Katie and she took Katie to her home because she was searching a bound girl, even though she was too young to be of much use for several years. She also thought that she was too young and several years she would help Mrs. Ellis in her household work. I could do much better, I know, said Mrs. Ellis. But as no one seems inclined to take her, inclined is willing to. Mrs. Ellis said, no one seems inclined, no one seems willing to take her, Miss the youngest. Daughter Maggie, I must act for a sense of duty, expect to have trouble with the child. For she is an undisciplined thing, used to having her own way. But no one said, I shall take Maggie. But no one said, I shall take Maggie. Pitying glance, sad looks were cast on her wan and wasted. Wan and wasted means pale and thin, firm, and thoughts were troubled on her account. No one was in favor of Maggie, who was disabled, who was handicapped, and who was unable to sit properly on bed. Pitying glances, sad looks were cast on her pale and thin form, and thoughts were troubled on her account. Mothers brought cast off garments, and removing her soiled means dirty, and ragged means old and torn clothes, dressed her in a clean attire means a dress. Her mother, when her mother was alive, she was bringing cast of clothes of the villagers and was changing her clothes and was cleaning her body. She was taking care of her youngest daughter very seriously. The sad eyes and patient face of the little one touched many hearts. Maggie was very sad after the death of her mother. She was very patient. She was watching each and everything patiently. She saw that her elder brother John was taken by Jones. Her sister, elder sister, Katie was taken by Mrs. Ellis, but no one was thinking about her because she was handicapped, she was disabled, she was unable to move or walk. Sad eyes and patient face of the little one touched many hearts, and even knocked at them for entrance. Many people gathered there were watching her and saw the sad look of the girl, but none had the courage to carry the girl at home. No one was so strong inwardly to carry that handicapped girl at home. Even her sad look, her patient face knocked at the heart of each and everyone for entrance. But no one was so courageous to carry the girl at home. But none opened to take her in. No one opened the door of the heart to take the girl in who was handicapped. Who wanted a bedridden child? There was a question. People were talking there. Who wanted a bedridden child to take her to the poor house? Said a rough man. A rough man said that the girl should be sent to the poor house. Poor house means workhouse. Of whom the question, what is to be done with Maggie, was asked. Nobody is going to be bothered with her. Bothered means concerned with her. When people were talking about Maggie, what is to be done with Maggie, then a rough man answered that the girl should be sent to the workhouse, the girl should be sent to the poor house. The poor house is a sad place for a sick and helpless child, answered. One of the villagers answered that the poor house is a sad place for a sick and a helpless child like Maggie. For your child or mine, said the other, lightly speaking. But for its brat means a child who behaves badly, it will prove a blessed change. If the child behaves badly, for such kind of child, poor house would be a best place. But for a girl like Maggie, poor house is a hell. That is not a good place. She will be kept clean, have healthy food, and be doctored, means given medical treatment, which is more than can be said of her past condition. There was a reason in that, but still it did not satisfy. The day following the day of death was made the day of burial. A few neighbors were at the miserable hovel. Hovel means a small dirty house in a bad condition, but none followed dead cart as it bore the unhonored remains to its pauper grave. Pauper means empty grave. A few neighbors were at the miserable hovel. A few neighbors were at the miserable hovel. Hovel, a small dirty house in a bad condition. After the death of the woman, some villagers gathered near the dirty house, which was in a bad condition, but no one followed the cart in which the dead body was being carried to an empty grave. Farmer Jones, after the coffin was taken out, when the coffin in which the dead body was kept, Farmer Jones, after the coffin was taken out, placed John in his wagon and drove away, carried John in his wagon, satisfied that he had done his part. Mr. John was satisfied that by adopting the oldest son, he had done his part. Mrs. Ellis spoke to Kate with a hurried air, and when the dead body departed from the house, Mrs. Ellis spoke to Kate with a hurried air, bid your sister goodbye, tell your sister goodbye, now I am going to take you at my house, and drew the tearful children apart, or scarcely their lips had touched in a sobbing farewell. Their lips were not touching due to sobbing, but the children were parted with each other. Hastily, others went out, some glancing at Maggie, and after the departure of the dead body, people started departing hurriedly from there, some glancing at Maggie. Some were glancing at Maggie, and some resolutely refraining, avoiding from a look. Some were not looking at Maggie. Such was the condition of the villagers. Until all had gone, when all the villagers had gone, she was alone. She was alone in the house. She was alone in that tattered hut. Just beyond the threshold, Joe Thompson, the wheelwright, a person who makes and repairs wheels, paused there, stopped there, and said to the blacksmith's wife, who was hastening off with rest, who was also in a hurry to leave the place because the rest of the villagers had already left the place. It is a cruel thing to leave her so. Joe Thompson said it is a very cruel thing to leave Maggie in such a condition. Then take her to the poor house. She will have to go there, answered the blacksmith's wife, springing away and leaving Joe behind. Springing away, she jumped from there and left Joe behind and said, "Take her to the poor house. She will have to go there." Poor house will be the best place for Maggie. No one will take such a handicapped girl at home. For a little while the man stood with a puzzled air. For a short while Joe Thompson was standing there in a puzzled air, in a confused mood. Then he turned back and went into the hovel again. Then he turned back and entered in the hovel, entered in a small dirty house which was in a bad condition. Maggie, with painful effort, had raised herself to an upright position and was sitting on the bed. Maggie, after the departure of each and everyone, Maggie, with painful effort, had raised herself to an upright position and was sitting on the bed, straining her eyes upon the door out of which all had just departed. She was staring at the door from where all the villagers departed one by one. She was very sad and she was staring at the door through which the villagers carried her elder brother and sister. A vague terror had come into her thin white face. A vague terror, an uncertain terror, an uncertain fear was visible on the forehead of Maggie when she was left alone in the hovel, when she was left alone in the hut. For a little while the man stood with a puzzled air. Then he turned back and went into the hovel again. Maggie, with painful effort, had raised herself to an upright position and was sitting on the bed, straining her eyes upon the door out of which all had just departed. A vague terror had come into her thin white face. An uncertain fear had come into her thin white face. "Oh, Mr. Thompson," she cried out. She cried out. There was a pain in her words. "Oh, Mr. Thompson," catching her suspended breath. Catching her suspended breath, she cried out. There was a pain. There was a pain in her words. "Oh, Mr. Thompson, don't leave me here alone. Don't leave me here alone." Though rough in exterior, Joe Thompson, the wheelwright, had a heart and it was very tender in some places. Though rough in exterior, Joe Thompson was very rough from outside, but his heart was very soft and tender from inside. He liked children and was pleased to have them come to his shop, where sledge and wagons were made or mended for the village lads without a draft on their boarded sixpence each. He was helping the children while he was repairing the sleighs and wagons of children. So he had a soft and tender heart inside, but outwardly he was rough. He answered, "No, dear," in a kind voice, going to the bed and stooping down over the children, bending down over the children. "You shan't be left here alone. You will not be left here alone." He said these words. Then he wrapped her with the gentleness almost of a woman. Then he wrapped her with the gentleness almost of a woman. Here metaphor is used to show that Mr. Thompson, in spite of being a man, can have tender parental feelings like those of a woman, like those of a mother. He had tender parental feelings of a mother. And that feeling was reflected when he wrapped Maggie with the gentleness almost of a woman, almost of a mother. In the clean bedclothes which some neighbor had brought, and lifting her in his strong arms, bore her out into the air and across the field that lay between the hovel and his home. Mr. Joe Thompson was strong enough to lift the weight of that handicapped girl, Maggie. Now Joe Thompson's wife, who happened to be childless, was not a woman of saintly temper, was not a woman of a holy nature, was not a woman of a kind nature. Now Joe Thompson's wife, who happened to be a childless. Joe Thompson had no children. His wife had no issue, was not a woman of saintly nature, and his wife was not a woman of kind nature. His wife was not like a holy man. His wife was not gifted with saintly nature, nor much given to help denial for others' good. And Joe. Now Joe Thompson's wife, who happened to be childless, was not a woman of saintly temper. Joe Thompson's wife, who happened to be childless, Joe Thompson's wife had no issue. She had no children, was not a woman of saintly temper. She was not like a holy person, nor much given to self-denial for others' good. And Joe had well-grounded doubts touching the manner of greeting she should receive on his arrival. When he arrived home, bringing the girl in his strong hands, he realized that his wife is not very happy, and he realized the thing through the manner she greeted her husband near the opening gate. Mrs. Thompson saw him approaching from the window. From the window, she saw her husband bringing a girl in his strong arms, and with ruffling feathers met him, and being irritated with ruffling feathers met him a few paces from the door. Being very irritated, she met him a few paces from the door. As she opened the garden gate, and came in, as he opened the garden gate and entered in the house, he bore a precious burden. Maggie was a precious burden for Mr. Thompson. Mr. Thompson had no children. That's why, while lifting the girl in his arms, he experienced the real touch of love and affection of the children. And that's why it was a precious burden for him. He felt it to be so. He experienced that Maggie was a precious burden for him. Maggie was a costly burden for him. As his arms held the sick child to his breast, a sphere of tenderness went out from her and penetrated his feelings. A bond had already corded, a bond had already tied, corded means tied, a bond had already tied itself around them both, and love was springing into life. Love was springing in the life of Mr. Thompson after the coming of this girl in his house. Sharply questioned Mrs. Thompson. Mrs. Thompson sharply questioned, "What have you there?" Joe felt the child start and shrink against him. Joe experienced that hearing the harsh voice of his wife, the child will start and she will shrink. He did not reply. Joe did not reply at once, except by a look that was pleading and cautioning. He answered through his look, and there was a request, there was a warning in his look that I shall give the answer to your questions after some time. That was a message through his look that said, "Wait a moment for explanation." The cautionary and pleading look of Joe Thompson gave a message to his wife that if you want explanation, I shall give you explanation, but it will take some time. Wait a moment for explanation and be gentle. Be gentle in your behavior. Be soft in your behavior. You will get explanation of each and every questions. And passing in, carried Maggie to the small chamber on the first floor. And passing through his wife, he carried Maggie to the first floor in a small chamber, in a small room, and laid her on a bed. Then stepping back, and after putting Maggie in a small chamber, in a small room on the first floor, he came back, stepping back, he shut the door and stood face to face with his vinegar-tempered wife in the passageway outside. In the passageway outside, he stood before his wife face to face to answer the questions which she wanted to know. "You have not brought home that sick bread." Anger and astonishment were in the tones of Mrs. Joe Thompson. Her face was in a flame. Her face was on fire. And with astonishment and anger in his tone, she told her husband that you have not brought home that sick brat, that sick child. Said Joe, "I think women's hearts are sometimes very hard." Usually Joe Thompson got out of his wife's way or kept rigidly silent and non-combative when she fired upon any subject. Joe Thompson kept rigidly silent and sometimes non-combative when he saw his wife on fire. It was with some surprise, therefore, that she now encountered a firmly set countenance. Countenance means face, and a resolute pair of eyes, and a firm pair of eyes. Women's hearts are not half so hard as men's. Joe saw by a quick intuition. Joe saw by a quick intuition. Intuition means to know something by using one's feeling rather than facts, that his resolute bearing had impressed his wife, and he answered quickly and with real indignation, with real feelings of anger and surprise. "Be that as it may." Every woman at the funeral turned her eyes steadily from the sick child's face, and when the cart went off with her dead mother, hurriedly away and left her alone in that old hut with the sun not an hour in the sky. After the departure of the dead body from the house of Maggie, the women of the village who gathered there left the hut one by one and the sick child Maggie was left alone in that tattered hut with the sun not an hour in the sky. Asked Mrs. Thompson, where were John and Kate? Farmer Jones tossed John into his wagon. Farmer Jones tossed John into his wagon and drove off. Katie went home with Mrs. Ellis. Farmer Jones tossed John in his wagon. The elder brother, John, was taken away by Farmer Jones. Katie went home with Mrs. Ellis, and nobody wanted poor sick one. Send her to the poor house was the cry. The women who gathered there were crying, send the sick girl to the poor house. Why didn't you let her go? Then what did you bring her here for? Mrs. Joe Thompson said to her husband, why didn't you let her go? Then what did you bring her here for? She cannot walk to the poor house, Joe said. Somebody's arms must carry her, and mine are strong enough for that task. She cannot walk to the poor house, Joe said. Joe said that she cannot walk to the poor house. Somebody's arms must carry her, and mine are strong enough for that. And my arms are strong enough to carry the girl at home. The rest of the villagers left the hut one by one. They were not ready to take Maggie at home. Then why did not you keep on? Why did you stop here? Demanded the wife. The wife demanded. The wife ordered her husband, then go and put the girl there in the poor house, because I am not apt to go on fool's errands. Fool's errand, a task that has no hope of being done successfully. Because I am not apt to go on fool's errands, the guardians must first be seen and a permit obtained. First, we have to meet the custodian or guardian of the poor house, and when he will give a permit, then the girl will go there. There was no gainsaying this. When will you see the guardian? Was asked with irrepressible impatience. Mrs. Joe Thompson asked with impatience, when will you see the guardians? When will you meet the guardians? Joe Thompson replied, tomorrow. Why put it off till tomorrow? Why do you put the matter till tomorrow? Go at once for the permit. Go at once to the poor house to get the permit and get the whole thing off your hands tonight, said the wheelwright. Jane, with an impressiveness of tone that greatly subdued his wife, said the wheelwright. The wheelwright said, Jane, with an impressiveness of tone that greatly subdued his wife. I read in the Bible sometimes and find much said about little children, how the Savior rebuked the despised who would not receive them, how he took them up in his arms and blessed them, and how he said that whosoever gave them even a cup of cold water should not go unrewarded. Now it is a small thing for us to keep this poor motherless little one for a single night, to be kind to her for a single night, to make her life comfortable for a single night. Mr. Joe Thompson requested his wife to show kindness only for one night to the girls, to make her one night comfortable. The voice of the strong rough man shook after saying these words. The voice of the strong rough man shook, and he turned his head away. He turned his head in other direction, so that the moisture in his eyes might not be seen. Her eyes filled with water, and he turned his head in other direction, so that the tears in his eyes could not be seen by his wife. Mrs. Joe Thompson did not answer, but a soft feeling crept into her heart. Look at her kindly, Jane. Speak to her kindly, said Joe. Joe said, look at her kindly, Jane. Speak to her kindly only one night. Make her one night comfortable. Think of her dead mother and the loneliness, the pain, the sorrow that must be on all her coming life. The softness of his heart gave unwanted eloquence to his lips. The softness of his heart gave unusual ability to speak well. If you can make her one night good, make her one night comfortable. It is my request to you. Mrs. Thompson did not reply, but presently turned towards the little chamber where her husband had deposited Maggie, and pushing open the door, went quietly in. Joe did not follow. He saw that her state had changed, and felt that it would be best to leave her alone with the child. So he went to his shop. Mr. Thompson went to his shop to do his work, which stood near the house, which was near his house, and worked until dusky evening released him from labor. And he remained there till the evening. A light shining through the little chamber windows was the first object that attracted Joe's attention on turning towards the house. When Joe was coming back from his work to his house, he saw a light was shining through the window. It was a good omen. It was a good omen. The path led him by this window, and when opposite, he could not help pausing to look in. When he reached near the window, he could not stop himself to look inside the room through the window what was going inside. It was now dark enough outside to screen him from observation. It was dark outside, so the person inside the room could not see the person outside standing in the dark. Maggie lay a little raised on the pillow with the lamp shining full upon her face. Mrs. Thompson was sitting by the bed. Mrs. Thompson was sitting by the bed near Maggie, talking to the child, and she was talking to the child, but her back was towards the window. So that her countenance was not seen. Her face was not seen by Mr. Thompson, who was outside in the darkness. From Maggie's face, therefore, Joe must read the character of their intercourse. Through the face of Maggie, Joe Thompson could easily read what conversation is going on between both of them. He saw that her eyes were intently fixed upon his wife. He saw that the eyes of Maggie was intently fixed upon his wife's eyes, his wife's face, and now and then a few words came. Now and then she speaks a few words as if in answers from her lips, and that was the answer to her lips. That her expression was sad and tender. Whatever the words she was speaking, through her words it was clear that her expression was sad and tender, but she saw nothing of bitterness or pain. But he saw nothing of bitterness or pain. A deep drawn breath was followed by one of relief, as a weight lifted itself from his heart. On returning, Joe did not go immediately to the little chamber. After coming back from his work to home, Joe did not go immediately to the girl's chamber. His heavy tread about the kitchen brought his wife somewhat hurriedly from the room where she had been with Maggie. Joe thought it best not to refer to the child. Joe thought not to talk about the girl at this time, nor to manifest any concern in regard to her, nor to express his anxiety about the girl. How soon will supper be ready? He asked. He asked his wife, how soon will supper be ready? Answered Mrs. Thompson, right soon, beginning to bustle about. There was no asperity in her voice. There was no harshness in her voice. After washing from his hands and face the dust and soil of work, Joe left the kitchen. Joe left the kitchen after washing the dust and soil of work from his hand and face, and went to the little bedroom. A pair of large bright eyes looked up at him from the snowy bed. From the snowy bed, a pair of large bright eyes looked up at him. Looked at him tenderly, gratefully, pleadingly. How his heart swelled in his bosom. With what a quicker motion came the heartbeats. Joe sat down, and now, for the first time, examining the thin frame carefully under the lamplight, saw that it was an attractive face and full of a childish sweetness with which suffering had not been able to obliterate. Okay. It was an attractive face. In the light of the lamp, Joe found that the face of Maggie was an attractive face, full of a childish sweetness. Childish sweetness was visible on her face, which suffering had not been able to obliterate, means destroy. Suffering had not destroyed the sweetness and attractiveness of her face. He said, "Your name is Maggie," as he sat down and took her soft little hand in his arm. Taking Maggie's soft little hand in his arms, Joe Thompson asked, "Your name is Maggie?" "Yes, sir," she answered. Her voice struck a chord that quivered in a low strain of music. Her voice struck a chord that quivered a low strain of music. Through her voice, a special kind of music was experienced by Mr. Joe Thompson. "Have you been sick long?" Joe Thompson asked. "Yes, sir." What a sweet patience was in her tone. A special kind of patience, a special kind of sweet patience was reflected through her words which she was speaking. "Has the doctor been to see you?" Joe Thompson asked. "He used to come, but not lately, but not recently." "No, sir." "Have you any pain?" "Sometimes, but not now," she answered. Maggie answered. "When had you pain?" "This morning my side ached and my back hurt when you carried me. When you carried me, my side ached and my back was paining. It hurts you to be lifted or moved about." "Yes, sir." "Your side does not ache now?" "No, sir." "Does it ache a great deal?" "Yes, sir. But it has not aged any since I have been on this soft bed." She answered that the day I came and slept on this soft bed, from that day I am not experiencing any ache or pain in my body. The soft bed feels good. "Oh yes, sir, so good. What a satisfaction!" Mingled with gratitude was in her voice. What a satisfaction, a special kind of satisfaction she experienced, and she was expressing her gratitude towards Mr. Thompson for bringing her to his house. Said Mrs. Thompson. Mrs. Thompson said, "Supper is ready," looking into the room a little while afterwards. Joe glanced from his wife's face to that of Maggie. Joe was glancing towards the face of his wife and then to Maggie. She understood him and answered, "You can wait until we are done. Then I will bring her some things to eat." There was an effort at indifference on the part of Mrs. Thompson. There was an effort at indifference on the part of Mrs. Thompson, but her husband had seen her through the window and understood that the coldness was assumed, means his wife became very normal. His wife cooled down and her behavior had changed altogether. Joe waited after sitting down to the table for his wife to introduce the subject uttermost in both of their thoughts, but she kept silent on the theme for many minutes, and he maintained a like reserve. At last she said abruptly, "What are you going to do with that child?" His wife asked. "What are you going to do with that child? I thought you understood me that she was to go to the poorhouse," replied Joe, as if surprised at her question. As Joe replied, as if surprised at her question. When his wife asked this question, "What are you going to do with that child?" Joe was surprised and replied, "I thought you understood me that she was to go to the poorhouse. Today, I shall go to the poorhouse and take a permit." Thank you. Mrs. Thompson looked rather strangely at her husband for a sound moment, and then dropped her eyes. And all of a sudden, she dropped her eyes. The subject was not again referred to during the meal. At its close, Mrs. Thompson toasted a slice of bread and softened it with milk and butter. Adding to this a cup of tea, she took them into Maggie. She prepared a breakfast for Maggie, and in that breakfast, she brought to her toast a slice of bread, softened it with milk and butter, adding to this a cup of tea. She took them into Maggie and held the small waiter on which she had placed them, while the hungry child ate with every sign of pleasure. "Is it good?" asked Mrs. Thompson, seeing with what a keen relish the food she was taking. She was enjoying the food that is provided to Maggie by Mr. Thompson. The child passed with a cup in her hand. The child stopped with the cup in her hand and answered with a look of gratitude. And she answered with a look of gratitude that she felt herself very happy by getting such a special kind of food that awoke to new life old human feelings which had been slumbering in her heart for half a score of years. "We will keep her a day or two longer. She is too weak and helpless," said Mrs. Joe Thompson in answer to her husband's remark. At breakfast time on the next morning, that he must step down and see the guardians of the poor about Maggie. Mrs. Joe Thompson's answer to her Mrs. Joe Thompson, in answer to her husband's remark, we will keep Maggie a day or two longer because she is too weak, she is too helpless. Let her remain here a day or two. When she will be strong enough, then we shall carry her to the poor house. Joe said, she will be so much in your way. I shall not mind that for a day or two, poor thing. Joe did not see the guardians of the poor house that day. Joe did not go to meet the guardians of the poor house that day, on the next, nor on the day following. In fact, he never saw them at all on Maggie's account. He never went to meet the guardian of the poor house for sending Maggie from his house to the poor house. For in less than a week, Mrs. Joe Thompson would as soon leave, though of taking up her own abode in the alms house as sending Maggie there. What light and blessing did that sick and helpless child bring to the house of Joe Thompson? Maggie brought light and happiness in the house of Mr. Joe Thompson, because Mrs. Joe Thompson had no issue, she had no children. The poor wheelwright, it had been dark and cold and miserable there for a long time, just because his wife had nothing to love and care for outside of herself. His wife condition was very miserable. She did not experience love and affection due to the lack of children in her life. And after getting Maggie as her child, her house was filled with love, happiness and affection, and so became sore, irritable, ill-tempered and self-afflicting, which is causing pain and suffering to her in her desolation of her woman's nature, in the loneliness of her woman's nature. She remained at home all alone. That's why she became ill-tempered. She became irritable, and her loneliness made her a harsh woman. Now the sweetness of that sick child, looking ever to her in love, patience and gratitude, was as honey to her soul. The look of Maggie was just like a honey to the soul of Mrs. Thompson, and she carried her in her heart as well as in her arms, a precious burden. Now Mrs. Thompson was also started doing the work that was done by Maggie's mother, and when she was lifting in her arms, she experienced that Maggie is not a burden, but she is a precious burden to her. As for Joe Thompson, there was not a man in all the neighborhood who drank daily of a more precious wine of life than he. An angel had come into his house. Now Mr. Thompson experienced that Maggie is an angel in disguise. Okay, and an angel had come into his house disguised as a sick, helpless and miserable child. It is true that Maggie is sick, helpless and miserable, but this angel in disguise filled all its dreary, means dull chambers with the sunshine of love. And sick, helpless and miserable child Maggie filled Mr. Thompson's house with love, sunshine and happiness. Thank you.